American gun laws are shifting rapidly, reflecting deep divisions and ongoing debates about the Second Amendment, public safety, and the role of government in regulating firearms. Now, the Supreme Court has just made a move that could fundamentally reshape the national conversation, sending shockwaves through both sides of the gun debate. In a high-profile order, the court allowed federal regulators to enforce new rules on so-called ghost guns, firearms that can be assembled at home from kits, often without serial numbers or background checks, making them nearly impossible to trace. This 8-1 decision gives federal agencies the green light to crack down on untraceable weapons, at least for now, while legal challenges continue to play out in lower courts. The ruling doesn't end the debate, but it signals the court's willingness to let regulators act while the legal battles over the future of gun enforcement continue to unfold. Ghost guns have become a flashpoint in the national conversation, raising urgent questions about public safety, individual rights, and the reach of federal power. Law enforcement officials warn that these weapons are increasingly showing up at crime scenes, while gun rights advocates argue that regulation infringes on constitutional freedoms. The decision comes as the Department of Justice also challenges strict local gun laws in Washington, D.C., hinting at a broader federal push to address gun violence and clarify the limits of local versus national authority. For everyday Americans, these moves create confusion and uncertainty. What rules apply? Who decides? How are rights and safety balanced in a country with such a strong gun culture and diverse opinions? To truly understand this moment, we need to look at what ghost guns are, why they matter so much in today's debates, and what the government is trying to achieve with these new enforcement efforts. The Supreme Court's action is just one piece of a much larger puzzle, with more high-stakes cases on the horizon that could further define the boundaries of gun rights and regulation. Each decision from the courts will shape the future of gun ownership, enforcement, and regulation in the United States, affecting millions of people and communities. The stakes are high, and the consequences will be felt in communities nationwide, from big cities to small towns, as Americans grapple with the realities of gun violence and the meaning of the Second Amendment. As the legal landscape shifts, the debate over guns in America is entering a new, uncertain era, one that will test the nation's values, laws, and sense of security. The story is far from over, and the next chapters will be written in courtrooms, legislatures, and communities across the country. The Supreme Court's order wasn't a final verdict, it was a stay, pausing a Texas judge's nationwide block on new ghost gun regulations. This means the court didn't weigh in on the merits of the case itself, but rather decided whether the rules should be in effect, while the legal battle continues. With an 8-1 majority, the court let the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives resume enforcement while the case moves through appeals. Only one justice dissented, showing broad agreement among the justices for this temporary measure. This procedural move has real impact. The Biden administration's rules are back in effect, requiring background checks and serial numbers for ghost gun kits. These rules aim to close loopholes that previously allowed untraceable firearms to be sold without oversight. The justices didn't decide if the ATF overstepped its authority. They simply kept the stricter rules in place for now. The question of whether the ATF has the legal power to regulate these kits will be decided later. The court's order suggests most justices weren't convinced the new rule caused irreparable harm. In other words, they saw no urgent reason to block the regulations while the case is being argued. For now, sellers must be licensed, buyers need background checks, and all ghost gun kits must have serial numbers, just like traditional firearms. And federal law applies nationwide, ensuring a consistent standard across all states, regardless of local laws or previous court rulings. The legal fight isn't over, but the Supreme Court has set a clear, temporary direction for gun enforcement. Both sides will continue to argue their cases in lower courts. The rules could stay in place for months or even years as the case winds through the courts, with each side preparing for a possible return to the Supreme Court for a final decision. For now, the status quo favors federal regulation, and the nation's approach to ghost guns remains under close judicial review. Ghost guns are firearms without serial numbers, often built at home from kits bought online or at gun shows. These kits let buyers assemble a working weapon with basic tools, no background check, no paperwork. Law enforcement can't trace these guns, making them attractive for criminals and nearly impossible to track after a crime. The internet and modern manufacturing have made ghost gun kits widely accessible, even to people barred from owning firearms. This loophole is at the heart of the current debate. Should these kits be regulated like traditional guns? Hobbyists argue home gun making is a legal tradition, but the commercial sale of untraceable kits is a new challenge. The controversy pits private gun making against public safety concerns. As ghost guns proliferate, they've become a central issue in America's gun control conversation. The stakes crime-solving, regulation, and the future of DIY firearms. To address ghost guns, the ATF updated the federal definition of a firearm to include kits and unfinished parts that can be easily turned into working guns. Now, manufacturers and sellers of these kits must be licensed, mark parts with serial numbers, and keep sales records. Buyers must pass background checks, just as if they were purchasing a finished firearm. The goal: close the loophole that let untraceable weapons flood the market. The rule doesn't ban kits, it brings them under existing gun laws, making them traceable and regulated. Law enforcement gains new tools to track weapons from manufacturer to buyer. The regulation targets criminals and prohibited buyers, not hobbyists building guns for personal use. By treating kits like traditional firearms, the ATF aims to balance gun rights with public safety. The fight is over regulation, not elimination. The ATF's new rule, aimed at regulating so-called ghost guns, faced immediate and fierce legal challenges from gun rights groups across the country, who argued that the agency was overreaching its authority and attempting to redefine the term firearm without the approval of Congress. They claimed this move threatened the rights of law-abiding gun owners and set a dangerous precedent for executive agencies. In a pivotal moment, a Texas federal judge sided with the challengers, blocking the rule nationwide and delivering a significant victory to those opposed to increased federal regulation. The Justice Department quickly appealed the decision, warning that halting the rule would undermine public safety, as untraceable ghost guns were increasingly being found at crime scenes and used in violent acts. The legal battle escalated to the highest court in the land. The Supreme Court intervened, issuing an emergency order to pause the Texas judges' block and allowing the ATF's rule to remain in effect for the time being. This decision means the ATF can continue enforcing its rule while the case is reviewed by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and possibly, the Supreme Court may revisit the issue in the future. The Supreme Court's order is only temporary. It does not resolve the underlying legal questions or determine whether the rule is ultimately constitutional, but it does allow the government to enforce the rule for now, as the legal process unfolds. The focus of the legal fight now shifts back to the lower courts, where both sides will continue to argue their cases and present new evidence. In the meantime, federal agents are empowered to keep regulating ghost guns, seizing untraceable firearms, and enforcing the new requirements. The outcome of this case will set a major precedent, shaping how far federal agencies can go in updating and enforcing gun laws without explicit direction from Congress. For now, the federal government's approach to ghost guns stands, but the debate is far from over. The next chapter in this high-stakes legal battle will be written in the appeals courts, with the nation watching closely for what comes next. The Supreme Court's ghost gun order isn't the only federal action shaking up gun policy. The Justice Department has sued Washington, D.C., arguing its strict gun laws, like bans on popular semi-automatic rifles and complex registration, violate the Second Amendment. The lawsuit cites the Supreme Court's Heller decision, which affirmed an individual's right to own firearms in common use. The Justice Department wants to block D.C.'s bans and force the city to loosen its gun control regime. Federal prosecutors have also been told not to enforce some of D.C.'s local gun restrictions, effectively sidelining parts of the law before the case is decided. This federal push challenges local authority and creates legal uncertainty for D.C. residents. Supporters say it restores gun rights. Critics warn it undermines local safety. The clash sets up a major legal battle over who controls gun policy in the nation's capital. The outcome could ripple far beyond D.C. The Supreme Court is set to hear more cases that could reshape gun rights nationwide. In United States v. Hamani, the court will decide if people who use drugs, like marijuana in legal states, can be barred from owning guns. The law's vague language has led to broad bans, but the court may narrow its scope, affecting millions. A ruling could align federal gun law with changing state marijuana laws. Another case, Wolford v. Lopez, challenges restrictions on carrying guns onto private property open to the public. Plaintiffs argue that permit holders shouldn't need extra permission to carry in stores or restaurants. The outcome could limit states' ability to enforce gun-free zones on private property. These cases show the court is poised to make transformative decisions on gun rights and regulation. The legal landscape is about to shift again. The stakes: who can own, carry, and regulate guns in America. These court battles have real consequences for Americans. For now, buying a ghost gun kit means a background check, just like buying a gun in a store. Supporters call it common sense. Opponents see government overreach. The DC lawsuit could loosen local gun laws, making it easier to own rifles, but raising safety concerns. The Hemeny case could let legal marijuana users keep their gun rights, but some fear new risks. The rules are changing fast, and what's legal today could be challenged tomorrow. The courts are redrawing the lines between rights and safety. The only certainty: the debate over guns in America is far from settled.